Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Royals Rundown Podcast, the Kansas City Royals podcast presented by Royals Review. I am Jacob Milham. He is Jeremy Greco. And listen, I would say crush something in the spirit of something, but the pollen has crushed my nasal sinus passages, okay? I don't have the energy for all that, Jeremy.
How about in the spirit of the Royals demoting Nick Pratto and people's dreams, let's crush it.
Yeesh. Yeah, that's pretty well crushed. That's pretty well crushed. We learned about that shortly after last week's episode, but before we get rocking and rolling into it, please go support the folks that make this happen over at royalsreview.com. You can also follow Royals Review on X and on Facebook at Royals Review. You can also find them on Threads at Royals Review. Jeremy, you've been very busy over at Royals Review this week. Care to tell us what you've been going on over there since the last episode?
So I had my final roster preview came out, and I'm proud to say I got 24 out of 26, 25 out of 26 right, I think.
We love it.
I said Michael Massey would be on the roster, but at the time I didn't know that he was hurt or that he would begin the year on the injured list. So, and I said that Dyrone Blanco and Nick Loftin would be battling for that 26 spot. And now they're both on the roster. Yep. So I feel pretty good about that. I was going to put Josh Taylor on there, but then the team announced on Zerpa, Josh Taylor is on the injured list. So I do have some questions. I think I'm going to take the win there and be like, Josh Taylor would have made the roster, but he was hurt. So Zerpa.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that, Jeremy. And hey, kudos to that's a pretty good batting average if you ask me. 24 for 26. If for all you math aficionados, that's basically 12 out of 13.
That's what happens when you do your roster preview a mere 2 days before the official official announcement.
Yes, that is true. So just to clarify, as of this recording, we still don't have an official announcement of the opening day roster, but we will run down what it looks like and why it looks that way coming up here in a little bit. Plus, later on in the episode, we are going to discuss more of the stadium updates and more of the things that Jeremy has learned since we last spoke. Plus, we got to talk about Nick Pratto. We got to talk about Nick Loftin. And hey, there's a big exhibition game coming up on Monday. You wanna learn about that and keep an eye on that. So, Jeremy, let's go ahead and skip over transactions because, like we said before the show, any transactions that would happen are affecting the opening day roster. So, Royals Review's Max Reaper put out the what the roster looks like to him and basically what it looks like to everyone else at this point.
I can't imagine it looking any different than that right now.
Yeah, so let's go and run through this. At catcher, we have two, Freddie Fermin and Salvador Perez. No surprise there. Infielders, we have Adam Frazier, Michael Garcia, Garrett Hampson, Nick Loftin, Vinny Pasquantino, and the illustrious Bobby Witt Jr.
I can't believe he finally made the team.
I know, it is great. It's great to see such a young prospect like Bobby Witt Jr. finally get the shot he deserves. It's been so long coming. In the outfield, we have Dyrone Blanco, like you said, Kyle Isbell, MJ Melendez, Hunter Renfroe, and Nelson Velasquez. Now moving over to the pitching side of things, we have the starting rotation featuring the one and only Alec Marsh, who got the great news that he was the fifth starter for your Kansas City Royals. And then plus we also have Seth Lugo, Cole Reagans, Brady Singer, and Michael Wacha. More on Wacha later on in the episode. And then rounding out in the bullpen, we have Nick Anderson, Jordan Lyles, James MacArthur, Matt Sauer, John Schreiber, Will Smith, Chris Stratton, and Angel Serpa. And then where does that put the rest of the players? Well, on the injured list, we have Jake Brentz, Chris Bubich, Carlos Hernandez, Michael Massey, Josh Taylor, and Kyle Wright. Jeremy, when this really took shape, were there any major surprises to you?
Not really. Again, other than I had not anticipated Michael Massey getting hurt.
Yeah.
I have predicted all along. I said, listen, I know Nick Pratto is having a really good spring, but I don't think it's enough to get him on the roster. And I know Velasquez has been having a bad spring, but compared to what they did during the regular season last year.
Yeah.
And again, the spring training stats, you're looking at the OPS and the home runs, and you're going, oh boy, that looks so good. But those aren't real. Those are mirages out in the desert of Arizona.
Yes.
You look at the walk rate and the strikeout rate, and Pratto was still he was not striking out as much, but he also kind of stopped walking a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think he's changed his approach. A lot of people say he's being more aggressive now. That kind of looks like what that is in the numbers. And maybe it'll pay off for him, but it's not there yet. I do think that Nick Pratto is the first guy up if Pasquantino gets hurt, if one of the outfielders gets hurt. Or even if not Michael Massey, Adam Frazier, because I think he's corner outfielder, backup second baseman. They still have, I think they're going to have Loftin and Hampson that can cover that second base spot. So I think you would see at that point Nick Pratto come up.
Yep, I fully agree with that, and we'll talk a little bit more about Loftin and Pratto later on in the episode, like I spoke about. But there is already a little bit of concern for that opening day roster. The Royals had an intra-squad matchup down in Arizona before they head over to Arkansas for their exhibition game against the Northwest Arkansas Naturals. And unfortunately, Michael Wacha was hit on his pitching hand with a ball. And Matt Quatrero said that they think he's going to be fine. They're setting up a test and an x-ray, and hopefully they will know more by the time you're listening to this episode, but mainly on Monday. That's Jeremy, that could be like a really big blow to the rotation if this is a serious injury. This is not looking too good.
Yeah, gosh, we hope that if he has to spend time on the IL, it's not much. If you're wondering what will happen, Jordan Lyles almost certainly goes right back into the rotation, and it's one of those relievers that they demoted gets called up. Maybe it's McMillan. Klein is also already on the 40-man roster. So they have some options for guys that they can call up and then, immediately demote whenever Wacha comes back.
Yeah, and looking at the projected bullpen, it's I'm liking the amount of spot starters that they have available if need be. Say what you will about Jordan Lyles. At least he can come in and pitch multiple innings. Didn't say they have to be good innings, but he can do multiple innings. Angel Zerpa is also a guy that I continuously overlook. We still haven't seen a whole lot of him at the major league level. So he has something to prove, but he came up through the system as a starter, so he might be able to come in. Matt Sauer is also a starter by trade in the minor leagues, although making the jump from a double-A starter to a major league starter would be absolutely massive. So I hope it doesn't get to that. But there are some options that you have to feel okay about.
And there's still Daniel Lynch is going to be ready to come right back as well.
And yeah, there's plenty of guys that they're going to keep stretched out down in AAA. And I'm interested to see how Daniel Lynch performs in Omaha early on in the season. Is he going to have a chip on his shoulder and try to force his way back into the starting rotation? Or are they going to settle on transitioning him to the bullpen and see what he can do with that two-pitch mix? I don't know. Those are all things that we're going to find out in April. But that is, if you want to check out that full article from Max, go check it out on RoyalsReview.com. A lot of good reasons, a lot of good updates on like, hey, this is why this player's on the injured list, or this is why this player got the edge, yada, yada, yada. But Jeremy, earlier on in the episode, you talked about Nick Pratto getting demoted, and that was a really big point of contention in the Royals fan base, it seemed like. And honestly, I can't, it's hard to fault folks because Pratto was producing in spring training. Now, you put it clearly, you got to take all that stuff with a grain of salt. And the Royals apparently wanted to see him continue to do that in Omaha. Were you surprised by the Pratto news? Were you disappointed by it? Like, what were your thoughts on it?
I was only surprised in that I thought that with Massey going to the injured list, that they might choose to keep Pratto instead of Blanco, because they do have, Velasquez can play the outfield. He's going to be primarily the DH. and Hampson can play the outfield, so you could maybe get away with it at least for a little while, and then kind of reward the guy for the spring. But I think it absolutely makes more sense to go ahead and send him back to AAA and let him get some regular at bats, and see if he can continue his revamped approach and if it will continue to have success outside of Arizona.
Yeah, and we one of the big stories this spring was the fact that Nick Pratto was, according to his own testament, was finally healthy this spring, saying that he has dealt with injury for the past 2 seasons, whether it be this, that, or the other thing. Now, if you look at just the stats and you see, okay, this player played more than 100 games at that major league level across 2 seasons, and across both those seasons, he posted a negative value, a negative FWAR. He had one good spring, but he stayed in AAA. I think that if we look at it through that lens, the move makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
We definitely, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Before 2021, I think a lot of people had labeled Nick Pratto as a bust. Okay, he wasn't producing at the minor league level. He really struggled coming out of high school. And then he had that red hot 2021, and then he came back into the picture alongside guys like MJ Melendez and Bobby Witt Jr. And he still, over like the past 2 years, he still hasn't really put it together, even at the minor league level. He hasn't been very good. Like, he had a 53 weighted runs created plus down in AAA across 31 games. Like, that's not great. I really want to believe in his spring training performance. I really want to believe in the fact that he only struck out 19% of the time.
Yeah, that would be huge.
It would be. It would be. But one thing that I'm trying to scroll down to it because I found it earlier. His swinging strike rate was still really high, which is not good. His swinging strike rate this spring was 17.8%. Like, that's 3 points higher than 2023. That's 3 points higher than 2022. And frankly, that would be the highest that he's posted since rookie ball back in 2017. Like, that's not great. So he still has work to do. He's going to go down to Omaha and get a chance to work on that every single day. Right. So I think there is value there, Jeremy. Anything else that you want to add on Pratto?
Yeah, in regards to the injury stuff, it's kind of a interesting conundrum because a lot of guys will tell you when they don't perform that, oh, I was hurt, but everybody kind of gets hurt throughout the season, and it often becomes an excuse when you don't perform, and nobody talks about it if you do. But also, I'm on record as kind of questioning how the Royals have been treating injuries the past few years. With Hunter Dozier, clearly wasn't himself after he had that thumb injury, but he was brought back. Carlos Santana had complaints. There was also Salvador Perez last year, got brought back before it seemed like he should have been. So it's unclear, how much is real and how much isn't, but I think you could make an argument either way. So I guess that's my point is whatever you want to believe, you can believe it, and don't let anybody tell you that you can't believe that.
There are signs pointing to both sides of that argument, I would say. Let's see here, Jeremy. So let's go ahead and move on to Nick Loftin, because he was that was a roster decision that was very welcomed amongst the Royals fan base. After Michael Massey, who's still dealing with back tightness, according to what we're told, he's more of in a day-to-day manager, Matt Quatrero, but they are still taking it slow with him, still getting testing, still keeping him stretched out. So back tightness can be listen, Jeremy, we're both older than the average major league player, and back tightness is no joke, right?
You're right.
Excuse me. So we'll see how long it takes for him to get stretched out, but I don't know. Do you think that? I kind of think that Nick Loftin is going to be the opening day starting second baseman. What do you think, Jeremy?
I might put my money on Adam Frazier.
Yeah.
I think people are just. Nick Loftin is one of those guys that you want to root for. He's got the underdog story, but there are reasons to really question the numbers he put up last year. Yeah. So I think people might be overhyping him a little bit too much. I think he's probably got a career as a utility guy in the big leagues, but if you're counting on him to be an impact starter, you're probably barking up the wrong tree. I could be wrong on that. I've certainly been wrong before, but that's what he looks like right now. I'm happy for him to be on the opening day roster. I also do think that even once Massey is healthy, he's probably going to stay on the roster.
Yeah.
Because I do think there's actually more room for him than there is Tyrone Blanco with Garrett Hampson on the team. So
Gotcha.
I think that's probably what's going to happen. I also think people are probably going to be mad that he's not playing more often. So just get ready to get mad, I guess. But I still continue to stand by my prediction that Michael Massey will have kind of a breakout year this year and be a little bit better than average, at least.
Albeit a little delayed, unfortunately, due to this injury. And I will say, I don't think that there is some credit to be given to Frazier this spring. He had a late start in camp. I did not realize that he walked considerably more than he struck out. He walked 15% of the time while he's striking out 11% of the time. Yeah. A 348 OBP is absolutely going to play in the bottom half of the Royals lineup. And frankly, if you want the top of that lineup to do damage, you need guys who are performing at that rate.
Yep.
Now, am I saying that Adam Frazier is going to carry over his stats exactly after opening day? No, I'm not. But it does show a patient plate approach, I would say. And I'm hoping that he can carry some of that over into opening day. Like, and this is a random tangent. So Michael Garcia, another guy that did not get enough credit for walking how often as he did this spring, 18.9% of the time. And that came after he did so strongly in the Venezuela Winter League,
right?
Where he walked it was 38 times, only striking out 11% of the time. That is an amazing ratio. And I get it. The competition levels between winter ball and spring training are still very different, but they are similar, and they still show that he's carrying over a plate approach and what he's learned.
Yeah.
Into this is going to be his first opening day, and I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what he could do with a full season of the leadoff spot, which I would bet he's going to be in.
It'll be interesting to see, because I assumed that too, but MJ Melendez got some leadoff run in his rookie season, and he's let off a few games late here in spring training. So it might be that Michael Garcia ends up at the bottom of the order to be that quote unquote second leadoff man. I am on record as not believing in Michael Garcia necessarily. I know he hits the ball hard, but I felt like he was more of a shortstop than a third baseman, because he just wasn't getting those power numbers. If he's going to walk like this, and I agree that you don't just see it in spring training, and you don't just see it in Venezuelan winter ball, you see it in both places, that I think means something.
Yeah.
So I kind of turned on him and said, I think that no, maybe he can be an everyday third baseman. Maybe he won't do it with power necessarily, though he has shown a little bit more of that as well. Yeah. But if he can create value by getting on base more often, that'll work.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a very common, and it's just common sense at this point, when you are leading off the game and it's 0-0, no outs, and no one's on base, a single is as good as a walk.
Yep.
And I've also been on record with having my concerns about Michael Garcia. He's still 2024 is going to be where he proves, hey, I'm either Nicky Lopez or I am a core member of the franchise moving forward. And yeah, he's definitely not a stereotypical third baseman. He's not going to have
your Gary Gaetti.
Yeah, he is.
That's the guy I always think of when I think third baseman. I think Gary Gaetti.
He's definitely not Gary Gaetti. I'll tell you that much. He definitely ain't Mike Moustakas either.
Nope. Mike Moustakas to me is left-handed Gary Gaetti. So
I like it. Which, hey, I do. Let's run down this rabbit hole for a second. Moustakas unfortunately got released from the Chicago White Sox. Do you think he's going to latch on anywhere else, or do you think he's done? Yeah.
No, he wasn't particularly good last year. He stuck with the Angels only because he was the least bad option.
That's true. That's very true. He was playing some first too. So,
Yeah.
maybe if a team is really desperate, they need a guy over at first or in the DH. They can go that way, but it's kind of looking
I
like
feel
the
like
end
it's
for
a lot
Mike
easier to
Moustakas.
find a first baseman than a third baseman.
Yeah. I don't know if he has the wheels anymore or the jump to play third base.
Well, there is that, I suppose.
Let's see. So you already touched on it, or sorry, we already touched on it a little bit with Loftin, but what do you think he needs to do that he can control to stick on the 26-man roster? Because the odds are stacked against him, but even with Massey on the IL, and he's going to start the season on the IL, then he has to go on a rehab assignment. Like, there's probably a 2-3 week period where Nick Loftin is going to have a role with the Kansas City Royals. But the real question is that going to extend past April? I don't know if it does, Jeremy.
Yeah, so the first thing is to realize he's competing with Dairon Blanco. He's not competing with Michael Massey. He's not competing with Adam Frazier. He's competing for the 26th roster spot with Dairon Blanco. Right. So the things he can do is the same things you can always do, is play good defense. When you get an opportunity to hit, get a hit. And I mean, that's what he's got to do. The big thing is, if the Royals do believe in him as a future potential starter, then it almost doesn't matter what he's going to do. If you're a big Nick Loftin fan, you actually want him to get demoted.
Okay.
Because that means that the Royals believe that he has a future and that they want him getting every day at bats in AAA. If he sticks on the 26-man roster once Michael Massey comes back, then the Royals are kind of signaling, yeah, this guy, he's not really going to get an opportunity. We really don't think there's anything there. So if you're a Loftin, it's kind of counterintuitive, but if you're a Loftin fan, you actually probably want him to get demoted when Michael Massey comes back.
That's a great point, actually. I didn't think about that, Jeremy. So I'm also wondering, okay, what can happen outside of Loftin's control that would keep him on the roster? Something I haven't really thought of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy. Outside of Michael Garcia, there isn't a third baseman.
Garrett Hampson can play third, I think.
Garrett Hampson? Okay, I'll look that up, because I thought,
they'll say that Adam Frazier can play it. He has played it, but I wouldn't trust him there, but that doesn't mean they won't put him there.
He hasn't played it since 2017. Like, it's been a long time since Adam Frazier's played third. I know I'm typing, and yeah, Garrett Hampson he's played 14 games at the major league level over at third base, 97 innings. So that's something. At least he can be a spot guy if need be. But I'm hoping that maybe there's Michael Garcia injury.
You're hoping for a Michael Garcia injury?
No, I'm
Is
not.
That what you just said, Jacob?
No, I'm not hoping for it. I'm not hoping for it.
Clip it.
Oh, it's gonna end up on YouTube later on. No, it really wouldn't, because no one watches this except for you and me, Jeremy. Everyone else just listens. I am curious how Garrett Hampson will also fare in this, because I get it. The Royals historically don't like releasing guys that are still owed money. But in the grand scheme of Major League Baseball payrolls, $2 million isn't that much. That if Garrett Hampson's struggling and Dairon Blanco was also red hot and looking like an answer in the fourth outfield role, maybe he sticks. But that's a lot of dominoes that would have to fall.
Right.
And like you said, it doesn't benefit Loftin in the long run. Because he's going to get like maybe a start or two every week and less than 10 plate appearances a week, and he's
more
just
than he would get if Ned Yost or Mike Matheny were managing, but still not many.
True. I'm hoping that Royals fans will quiet down a little bit on Matt Quintrero's lineup decisions, but I'm also hoping that he can kind of scale it back a little bit.
Just to reiterate, you can't blame Quintrero for putting out 100 different rosters last season when he didn't have 9 guys that he could count on.
Yeah.
You can't blame him for not pinch hitting guys who also aren't hitting. It just you can't. You also, as far as relievers go, you can't blame him for putting in the wrong guy when none of them are the right guy.
Yeah, that was
when you're telling me, oh, he should have been putting in the guy with the 7 ERA instead of the guy with the 8 ERA. I'm not here for that argument. I'm sorry.
No, that's not really a very. There is an argument, but it's not a fun argument, and there's no winning that argument if you ask me. So, hey, Jeremy, we'll get on to the stadium stuff here in a second, but I do want to wrap up some other things that are happening this week ahead of opening day that folks should be aware of. So we talked about the Northwest Arkansas Naturals game. That is happening Monday night at 6:05 Central Standard Time.
Televised? Do you know?
You know what? Could you look that up real quick, because I'm not sure. I haven't seen any plans for it to be televised. I'm sure it's going to be on the radio, but I'll be interested to see if it's televised anywhere.
It does not look like it's got TV or radio when I look at MLB.com.
Okay, sounds like a plan. So I'm looking at Saturday's media notes, and it does say that it's going to be on 610 Sports.
All right, well, there you go then.
We have...
Maybe not on MLB radio, maybe just on 610.
Maybe so.
It'd be weird, but maybe.
It wouldn't be out of the ordinary, I guess, with all these weird different streaming and radio roles around Major League Baseball. It is saying that right-handed pitcher Luis Cessa will face off against right-handed pitcher Brady Singer down at Arvest Ballpark.
See, MLB says Singer versus TBH. Or TBD, excuse me. Not to be honest, to be determined.
Yeah, yes.
To be honest, it's to be determined.
There we go. I like it. So that's Monday evening. Please stay tuned to RoyalsReview.com, Kansas City Royals social media, see where you can take in that game, which it ain't going to be much, but it'll be a cool experience for the fans down there in Arkansas, I think, Jeremy. Looking on Tuesday, mandatory off day in Kansas City. And then on Wednesday, the Royals will host a team workout in Kauffman Stadium at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. That is open to the public.
It's free, but you have to get a ticket.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that. And I'm sure folks can go to Royals.com and get a ticket, right?
Yeah.
So that is another way you can get ready for opening day on Thursday. But you can always just tune in here Thursday morning for our 2024 projection and prediction episode extravaganza over here. I'm definitely looking forward to that, Roger.
You have any special guests, Jacob, or is it just going to be you and me?
I don't have any lined up yet. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
We'll have to see who we can wrangle up on short notice. How's that sound?
All right, let's do it.
Game day internship with the Omaha Storm Chasers is the perfect opportunity for a college student interested in exploring a career in the sports industry. Storm Chasers interns have the chance to work in almost every aspect of game day and event operations at Warner Park, while gaining knowledge about the inner workings of minor league baseball. There's no better way to learn and grow while discovering your passions and goals than becoming a part of our Chasers family. To learn more about internship opportunities with the Storm Chasers, head to omahastormchasers.com or email Ania Tate, ANIYAT, at omahastormchasers.com.
Everyone get on your feet, stir up the storm, we're family.
Baseball season is on its way, and there's no better place to spend the summer than with the Quad Cities River Bandits. From the Royals' top prospects on the field to a jam-packed promotional schedule, the fun never stops at Modern Woodman Park. Can't miss any of the action? Ticket packages are on sale now, with full season plans starting at less than $5 per game. Season ticket holders enjoy premium perks, including guaranteed giveaways, team store discounts, a full season parking pass, and so much more. For more information, visit riverbandits.com or call 563-324-3000.
So speaking of just doing it, you really took the bull by the horns last week with all this stadium stuff, man. I'm just kudos to you, man. That was a lot, and you handled it very well.
Well, thank you. It is a lot, and it's fun to feel like I'm able to write something that matters. Not that I don't love writing game recaps and silly previews and all this stuff. I do, or I wouldn't be doing it. But it's also fun to feel like, oh, hey, I'm writing something that matters. But it is a bummer that what I'm writing is like, man, the team that I root for is oh boy. So just to kind of update you all, hopefully you listened to our episodes last week. The Royals before that episode they announced the CBA. Yeah. After that episode, I saw what Councilman Manny Abarca, I don't know how you say his name. He put out there, and so I was like, I want more details. Well, that's all the details it looks like we're gonna get. And it was basically the Royals will put $3.5 million into an escrow fund every year, and a board that will be at least 45% chosen by Royals will figure out how to distribute the money every year to one of several causes. And basically the only restriction is that it's supposed to happen every year. But there are, as I clarified actually when I talked to the county executive's office, Caleb, I've forgotten his last name all of a sudden, Caleb Clifford.
Yep.
I talked to him. He's the
chief of staff.
Goodness, I am losing my mind over here. Chief of staff. There is no enforcement mechanism in that document.
Wow.
So, and the county hasn't signed anything. So I had originally written that the county had agreed to help enforce this with the assumption that the Royals would, flood the board with guys who were going to say, do whatever you want. And he said, well, the county hasn't signed anything, and there's no enforcement mechanisms in there for us to do anything with, even if we had. So the county's not doing anything with this right now. It's a disaster any way you look at it. I went and looked through it, and as best I can determine, the Royals could pay themselves $3.5 million and say, we're going to do some commercials and maybe a couple public speaking engagements talking about mental health awareness and call themselves good. And then the board, which would be 45% appointed by the Royals and probably really easy to convert however many, one or two other guys or women or non-binary people to vote in their favor and call it good and be done. And that's not community benefits. Nope. Sorry. It's just not. Can't help but notice how much of the document that Councilman Abarca posted was the Royals just bragging about the charities they already do. Cool. That has nothing to do with this. Not a single thing. That doesn't need to be there. What are we doing? Also realized that, and this is something I hadn't considered, but realized that, with the stadium moving downtown, they're not going to pay property taxes because they never pay property taxes. So all those buildings that they're demolishing would have paid property taxes. So the county is not only there because they did modify it this time so that any extra money could be spent, elsewhere, but that just means the Royals will guarantee that they spend it. But what we also, they'll also be losing that property tax money, which affects the public school system, which the Royals said, hey, we'll make sure that's covered. But it also covers the libraries, covers some other programs in the area, which are important programs. And this is what I'm talking about when I say that a CBA is there to make sure that when the stadium gets built, the situation around it doesn't get worse. And honestly, I can't remember if I said this last week, but that should be what the team wants too. The team should not want like a slum to develop around their new stadium. They should want a thriving area, which means that they should be willing to inject some funds into it. And the Royals seem completely disinterested in that. Or at least in any kind of like promise to actually do that, even as they're touting that it is, the biggest CBA in all of baseball history. It's meaningless. There is no enforcement mechanism. So, but yeah, so it's just kind of, the library system really bugs me because, man, I didn't grow up in Jackson County. I grew up in Johnson County. But the public library system there was a huge part of my childhood. I was there every other day, pretty much, checking out books for school, checking out books for fun, using the computers. Just like it was a great part of my childhood, and that's something that I want everyone to have. And to hear that like the Jackson County Public Library system is going to miss out on millions of dollars in taxes over the next 40 years is just, it's a huge bummer for me.
It is.
So and then one final thing. I guess the big thing was that I didn't talk about last week, the fact that I feel like there's a conflict of interest happening here, where there's one organization that was kind of leading the negotiations with the Royals from the other side. The Urban League of Greater Kansas City has a board member, Adam Sachs, who is, and again, this is not just any organization that was part of the negotiation. This was the leading organization and one of two organizations that were left at the table when the deal was signed. And it's not just any executive, Royals executive Adam Sachs. He is the vice president of community relations and the senior legal counsel. These are not just like incidental connections that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So I didn't mention that last podcast. I kind of tried to hint at it, but I wanted to give the Royals a chance to comment on it before I said anything publicly. And I gave them that chance, and they declined to comment publicly. So they forfeited their right to have a say. So I'm just going to keep pointing out that this is a thing. This seems really problematic. Oof. And then one final thing of note to me was one of the other negotiators, Laura McDonald, talked about her experience trying to negotiate from the community organization side, and how she was forced to watch the negotiations on a TV in a separate room.
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem like a great way to negotiate.
No.
Or to make your organization's voice heard. So she and her organization obviously left the negotiations too, and that came out after the Royals announced their stuff. So just a lot of really fishy stuff happening here. I'm afraid that there's probably more to come. The vote is not until as this comes out on Monday, it's not until a week from tomorrow, basically. And so I think we're probably going to keep hearing more stuff until then. And as I wrote in my piece over the weekend, if the Royals get their yes vote, I doubt we're ever going to hear about the CBA again.
Yeah.
And probably not lots of other stuff. I doubt the Royals are going to want to talk about it, because I doubt the Royals are going to follow through on it. And they're just going to be like, yeah, it was historic. It was unprecedented, blah, 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 blah. And then not give you any more details, just as they haven't given you any details about the study that found the concrete cancer, or how they're going to generate these jobs, or what kind of jobs they're planning to generate in the area, or how that's going to benefit Jackson County. They just keep saying things, they keep hyping things, but they don't want to give you hard numbers. They don't want to give you details.
Yep, and they're definitely not going to. I hate to put it like this, but they're not going to owe it to us, I guess, in a sense. Like, why would they?
Yeah, once they have their yes, why would they?
Yeah, that's
why I have gone complete. I know I started from a position of I don't think we should give billionaires money to build stadiums, but I was also starting in that position of like, yeah, it's going to happen anyway. I'm going to try not to get too worked up about it. I've gone from that position to begging you, please vote no. Please, the Royals are not going to move. It's certainly not going to move instantly. John Sherman has strong ties to Kansas City. That's one of the reasons David Glass sold the team to him. So if the team does move, he's not going to move it. He's going to sell the team to someone else, and they'll move it, which also takes time. So if you've got to do that, or renegotiate kind of more openly, and with maybe a little bit more honesty, maybe a little bit more humility on the team's part, and not just assume that everything is going to happen because you want it to, which is how it kind of seems like the Royals have kind of been doing things. I think that they'll probably choose the former, and we'll get an opportunity not just to keep the Royals, not just to get a downtown stadium, but to get a better deal for the county and for the community, for the people who live in Jackson County, which again, I do not count myself among, but who I want to support, because I want to support all my fellow humans. I want everybody to get a good deal.
Yeah, as we all should. It's supposed to benefit the community, and frankly, the CBA doesn't look like it does at all. Speaking of the April 2nd vote, Jeremy, that was the poll question I put up on our last episode. How are you voting on April 2nd? The options I put up were yes, no, don't care, and can't vote. We got 1 yes vote, 1 no vote, and 9 can't votes. So
Interesting.
yes.
Interesting
of course,
demographics we have, Jacob.
I know, right? Very, very interesting. Speaking of Spotify, let's go ahead and get over to the Q&A responses. So I asked, which fringe player do you think should make the opening day roster? Why? Nash fan Sam said Pratto, and look at his spring numbers. Maybe this is when he wakes up and performs. That's what we're hoping he could do down in the minors right now, Sam. Royal Rupert said Tyler Tolbert. He plays a great center field and shortstop, super speed and smart base stealer. Eric Sarantola in the bullpen, big boy fastball. I'm going to use that to describe a very good fastball from right now. He's got a big boy fastball. Thank you for that, Rupert. Corey Michael said Tyler Gentry because I love him and don't like most of our outfield options. Honestly, Corey, we're kind of there with you, right, Jeremy?
Yeah.
And then our good friend of the podcast, Lux, said Michael Massey is the truth. So, Jeremy, you have a friend in your corner there for your breakout Michael Massey season. How are you going to respond when Chris?
I'll throw a tasteful party. And I discovered recently that he is on Cameo. So
right.
maybe I'll get a cameo from him and just be like, hey, Chris, tell me, what does it mean to be pitching in the big leagues and be the best starter on the team again? Are you ready?
Oh my gosh. Cole Reagans would like to have a word. Hey, Jeremy.
Cole Reagans can have his words, but they'll do their battle on the mound.
Ooh, I like it. Yeah. All right, Jeremy, let's go ahead and get on out of here this evening with some Royals reviews. I'm going to put you on the spot and have you start us off this evening. What you got?
All right, I'm going to go with what I've been just obsessed with for the last little bit, which is I mentioned Dimension 20 and Crown of Candy. I started another Dimension 20 campaign, and as much as I loved Crown of Candy, Fantasy High, which is their very first campaign, is just absolute madness in all of the best ways. It's they play 6 teenagers who fit into kind of, your regular teenage stereotypes of like, kind of a goth loner kid, kind of an emo former party girl who is mad at the world now, really preppy uptight girl, a really preppy uptight guy, a guy who thinks he's trying to be an adult already, and he's walking around with his briefcase and his business cards and handing them out and thinks he's real cool. They got everything going on there. But it's fantasy characters, fantasy classes in a fantasy setting that kind of blends some stuff from the real world, where like the school aesthetic and kind of the town aesthetic is like 50s America, but also they have crystals that act as cell phones. So just all kinds of stuff going on there. There was a greaser motorcycle gang, which is very 50s, but it's absolute insanity at every level. Just to give you an idea, their first combat session was against a giant creamed corn golem that spawned from the lunch in the lunchroom. It came alive and just started attacking people.
Yeah.
So that just to give you a little taste.
Ooh, I like it.
It's I am dying of laughter all the time. There are so many jokes that kind of happen early on and just keep getting carried on. Like one guy gets the nerdy character gets dunked into a trash can, and the bully says, everyone's got to call him the ball now. Everyone has to call him the ball. He's the ball. And so far for the rest of the series, a couple of the characters have continued to refer to him as the ball.
Oh, geez.
Like they're like, the ball, come here. It's great. It's so fun.
Where can folks check that out at?
That is okay. So this is where it gets a little tricky.
Oh boy.
It is not on any of your normal streaming services. It's on Dropout TV, which is what College Humor kind of turned into when they realized that College Humor couldn't exist as a YouTube channel and succeed anymore. They have lots of other good stuff on there that I've watched. I've talked before also about Make Some Noise, which is an improvisational game show that they do. They also have Actually, which is a very nerdy thing where they'll read questions that are like about nerdy things that have just like a really tiny factual mistake, and you kind of like Jeopardy, you have to say actually, and then tell them what's wrong with it. There's all kinds of really good stuff on there. There's lots of stuff I haven't even seen yet. There's also a game show called Game Changer, which is different rules that the contestants have to figure out every week before they can even really play the game. So it's a lot of improvisational stuff, a lot of comedy stuff, but it's a lot of fun and it's not very expensive. I think I have it for like $40 a year. So it's like $3 a month, $5 a month, something like that. Totally, absolutely worth it. I've been getting my money's worth. I've been kind of binging just Fantasy High even all weekend.
Dang. All right, I like it. It's I was kind of curious what happened to College Humor. I knew they weren't like a YouTube channel anymore, but that's good to know that they're on Dropout TV. So go check that out, y'all. My review is just gonna be short and sweet because it's a very minute thing that most folks aren't gonna care about. It is about the redesign of the Northwest Arkansas Naturals. So if you don't know, for the Navy, I do things like graphic design and photography and communications plans, things like that. And so I kind of have an eye for things like that. And I very much appreciated the redesign of the Northwest Arkansas Naturals because some of the more like recognizable symbols with the team really resembled the Omaha Storm Chasers in a bad way. Like, I remember when I first learned what the Naturals were, they had a lightning bolt going through the end. And I'm like, okay, how does that have to do with Naturals? I don't really get it. Later on, I learned, okay, it's supposed to be like with a storm, and their full logo has like a waterfall in the background, things like that. Like, okay, I get it. I can see how that fits in. But the redesign is much more, it's very eye-catching. And it leans more on, hey, it's about the Arkansas nature. Like, we're supposed to be about the naturals, and so we are putting the nature, not really like a storm theme, I guess is the way to put it. And some of their alternative logos are also very nice as well. So unfortunately, we won't get a chance to see that against the Kansas City Royals Monday night. But if you want to see some of the before and after, I'd highly suggest going and checking that out. It just looks nice and clean, and I would actually buy some of their merch if I had the money for it.
And don't forget, if you've got an MLB.TV package, which apparently a lot of you don't live in Kansas City, it comes with minor league baseball TV now, so you can watch a lot of those natural games on TV this year.
Exactly, and I definitely, if the Royals aren't on one night or if they have a weird hour, I'll go throw on a minor league game, and honestly, they're pretty fun. We got a good announcing crew in the Royals minor league system,
which you've heard from, I think, all of them now.
Yep. Heard from every single one of them, so that's good. We really appreciate them coming on the show before. All right, Jeremy, any closing thoughts before we get on out of here?
I will just reiterate, please vote no on question 1. Please, not to get the Royals out of town, to get them to do a fair deal. That's all.
There you go. I like that. Alrighty, y'all. If you want to keep up to date on all things Kansas City Royals, the best place to do that is RoyalsReview.com. You can also follow the podcast, Royals Rundown Podcast, on X and on TikTok at Royal Rundown Pod. You can find our social media links down in the podcast description below. From all of us here at the Royal Rundown Pod team, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support, and until next time, go Royals!